Right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about semantic markup. So what is semantic markup? Well, semantic markup is the idea that you have a set of best practices or an inferred way of building something so that you can kind of reason about what something is from just looking at it. It's kind of, think of it as a builder who's been like a contractor who's been working in the industry for many years, and the like with experience you start to realize that there are some best ways to build a house or a building or something like that. So most contractors can look at a building and kind of understand how that thing is built. And it's the same thing with software development. Like I can see certain, if I repeat the same thing over and over and I see other people do something very similar and a pattern emerges that becomes a so-called best practice of building something, then I can look at something that looks very similar, and I can from that assume that that's the way that's probably built. Now, in HTML, this is actually more important than in some other areas, and that is because in HTML you can make something that's not that thing you think it is look pretty much the exact same way using CSS, and like you can style it so that it looks identical or more or less. And the problem with that is that if you as a beginner start doing that, you're going, like, especially like this is completely unacceptable in a professional environment. I would even go as far as to say if you don't learn these best practices, your colleagues will complain and you might actually be labeled as like an unskilled developer. So what I want you to kind of understand is that it's better for you to figure out the quote unquote right way to do something than trying to hack something together yourself just because you can. And so if we look at this example here, we see two unordered lists. Or do we? Because if we look at the actual markup, we see that there's one unordered list here, and then there's a div with three divs, a few spans, and some styling, and this mid dot element here. So with this styling, I can make these two things that they're completely different things look very similar, or in some cases identical. And if I were to do this, this could create all kinds of problems, and it might actually create frustration for some developers who are pretty passionate about this stuff. But to give you a concrete example what this can do, so if you are creating web pages and you consider accessibilities like people using screen readers and that type of thing, it is extremely important that you use the right elements to describe different things. Like, if something is a header, use an H1 tag or an H2 tag. If something is a nav bar, use the nav element, and like all this stuff, because for people with disabilities who are using screen readers and that sort of thing, these things are very important. Like, most of these technology leverages the fact that there is a quote unquote right way to structure a page, and there are semantics in the HTML specification. And as a good developer, you need to follow these things as much as you can, because it will improve the experience for these people, and it will also make you kind of, it makes you a good citizen in your working environment. So remember, semantic markup means that just because it means that I should be able to look at what you've done and more or less figure out, like, look at your markup in HTML and kind of figure out what the elements you're using are, and in essence make sure that you use best practices when you're building components or repeating a pattern that's been done like 100 times. Don't like hack together your own thing unless you know exactly what you're doing.